I'll pay the $1,000 loan, so get out. Huh? But it's only $2,700 a month. I was taken aback by my sister-in-law's sudden loud voice and how off-base her remarks were. However, at that moment, she toughened her attitude towards me, saying, "I won't let you and your husband do as you please in this house anymore. And from now on, my husband and I will live in this house." She then told me to leave the house. It seems this was also directed at my husband, as my sister-in-law was eagerly trying to kick both of us out. "Well, if sister says so, let's leave," said my usually calm husband. So I decided to leave the house with him. Little did my sister-in-law and her husband know, an unbelievable future awaited them. They would find out about this a month after we left. My name is Catherine. My husband and I both work and live together. The first incident of my sister-in-law attacking our home and trying to kick us out began when my husband and I started living with my in-laws. At that time, my sister-in-law, Emily, was not in Japan as she had accompanied her husband on his overseas assignment. It was then that my father-in-law and mother-in-law, living in their house, asked us to live with them. Huh? Live together with us? I was surprised when my mother-in-law said, "We are getting old, right? You never know what might happen when living alone at this age. It's better to live with our son and his wife." Suddenly, we were invited to live in their house, something neither I nor my husband, Tom, could have anticipated. Tom and I originally met on a matchmaking app. Even though we met through such an app, usually, men would stop contact after one meeting or gradually lose contact. There are various patterns. However, among them, Tom kept exchanging emails with me and often went out to eat together. I liked Tom, and it seemed he felt the same about me. After 2 years of dating, we decided to get married. Our parents, close in age, were very happy about our marriage. However, there was one person whose feelings were unclear. That person was my sister-in-law, Emily. She was Tom's real sister, 3 years older than him. At the time our marriage was being discussed, she had been married for a year. She bragged about marrying before her brother Tom, saying, "I can't believe Tom is getting married." Compared to elite me, he's just an insignificant ordinary person. But, well, it's good for him, isn't it? His partner seems to be just an ordinary woman. Far inferior to me. She said this to dampen the happy mood of Tom's marriage. This surprised me too. After that, Emily kept belittling me and Tom, saying, "My husband is on an overseas assignment. He's a rising star. I'm fluent in English, so of course, I plan to go with him." I guess ordinary Tom and his wife can't even imagine our brilliant life. I didn't feel anger, perhaps because her way of belittling me and Tom was so childish. It wasn't that I was generous, but rather her saying we were insignificant made her seem like the one not worth bothering with. Tom seemed used to Emily's behavior and maintained his usual smile. Since Tom didn't get angry, I decided not to respond to Emily's remarks either. It must have been common for Emily to see her brother not react. But she seemed annoyed that I didn't respond either. "Catherine, right? Are you really okay with Tom as your partner? He's just an ordinary person, not superior to me, even though I'm a woman and older." "No, Tom is special to me." I replied this way because I loved Tom, but Emily seemed dissatisfied with my answer and said, "But a woman's happiness is marrying a valuable man and being provided for, right? Being with someone in a high position makes you feel the best, doesn't it? Surely, some people think marrying a well-off husband and being provided for is good. I don't think so." My response made Emily consider me incompatible with her, in fact, a loser who couldn't resonate with her sensibilities. Well, you're marrying Tom, so you're just average too. You two will probably lead an unexciting, unproductive life. Many people can only live such lives, so don't get discouraged and keep going. I thought it was terrible of her to say such things to two people about to get married and be happy. Tom, as usual, was calm, as if he was used to Emily's words. Seeing him like this, I thought it was unnecessary to get upset over Emily's remarks and managed to calm down. Sometime after our wedding, Emily went abroad with her husband. However, now that Emily and her husband were gone, my in-laws, feeling lonely, asked us to live with them. Since we had no reason to refuse, we started living with them, with the condition that it would be until Emily and her husband returned from abroad. Surprisingly, Emily's husband's assignment kept getting extended, and before we knew it, Tom and I had been living there for 10 years. During that time, I became pregnant and had a child. We had a lively boy, but there was one concern. It was about the aging of the family house. Our son, being a typical boy, often ran around the house, making me worry that he might hit a shaky pillar and break it. However, my in-laws didn't say anything about it. Well, that's to be expected. Even if my in-laws were worried about the aging house, they didn't have the money to do anything about it. So, Tom and I decided to build a new house. We planned to demolish the aging family home and construct a new one. A new house would alleviate worries of deterioration and the fear that our son's mischief might damage it. When Tom and I talked about demolishing the old house and building a new one, our in-laws were very happy. By this time, Tom and I understood why our in-laws wanted to live with us. Still, as there was no significant harm, Tom and I had left the matter unaddressed. And so, we demolished the old building and built our new home. Since we weren't wealthy enough to pay in full, Tom and I took out a loan, paying $2,700 monthly. Thinking of involving the in-laws in the finances, I suggested, Dad, Mom, about the house loan. How about contributing $1,000 a month? To our surprise, they were shocked and said, Why should we pay? You and Catherine built this house, right? We're just staying here, why should we pay anything? They refused to contribute at all. Since both in-laws were working, Tom and I thought they might be able to pay $1,000, even if it was a bit high. Even if they couldn't pay that, we expected at least $500. However, our assumption was quickly proven wrong. Both in-laws insisted that we built the house on our own accord and refused to pay anything. Realizing arguing was futile, Tom and I decided to manage the monthly loan repayment ourselves. Then, one day, Emily heard a rumor that we were living in a new house and contacted me. Hey, Catherine, I heard after we went abroad, you started living with my parents. Is that true? Yes, that's right. After you and your husband suddenly left. They felt lonely, so we moved in. Lies. I was baffled to have my truthful words instantly dismissed as lies. Lies? What do you mean? Well, you and Tom are just ordinary people, right? It's impossible that my parents would choose to live with you. They were relying on elite us. Emily always refers to herself as an elite. But I heard she quit her job to become a housewife and accompany her husband abroad. I wonder what she means by elite. I simply don't understand. See, you're speechless because I hit the nail on the head, she said. And I could only give a wry smile. Everything Emily said was wrong, but I didn't know how to respond to her overconfidence. Oh, right, my husband and I are returning to Japan next month. Oh, are you coming back for a visit? I'll let your parents know. Since going abroad, Emily and her husband rarely visited the family home, showing up only a handful of times. The in-laws would surely be happy to hear that Emily was coming home. No. It's not a visit. We'll be living in that house from now on. What? You see, you and Tom are no longer needed. I was taken aback. Emily's statement about living in the family home meant her husband's overseas assignment had ended. Initially, Tom, our son, and I planned to leave the house at this point. However, the concern was about the loan. Now, Emily and her husband would be taking over the monthly loan payment of $2,700. Given that her husband was an elite assigned overseas and Emily herself claimed to be an elite, it seemed unlikely they couldn't afford what we were paying. With this in mind, I remained silent. I see, I said, and then ended the call. Emily, having conveyed her return, said nothing further. With future considerations in mind, I immediately shared the content of Emily's call with Tom. While discussing this during our son's school hours, my in-laws, who had overheard the conversation, came to the living room smiling. How wonderful! Emily and her family are finally coming back. This marks the end of our unreliable living situation. Until now, Tom and I had been paying the loan. But we had been getting help from the in-laws with utility bills and groceries. Living together, it didn't seem fair for only one side to bear all the expenses. However, my in-laws had always been concerned about this. They seemed to think, if Catherine and Tom make us contribute to living expenses, it must mean they're not earning well. When Emily and her husband lived with the in-laws, they never made them pay anything, and it seemed the in-laws were comparing them to us. It appeared that while we were acceptable as residents, with Emily's return, we were no longer needed. Tom and I had always viewed our stay as temporary until Emily and her husband returned. So we began preparing to leave. The future loan payments could be left to Emily and her husband. However, finding a good property on short notice was challenging due to her sudden announcement. Amidst this chaos, Emily and her husband returned. This old house turned into this? Amazing. Oh, you're still here. Don't be so brazen as to squat in this house forever. Ordinary people should live in ordinary places. Look, I'll pay the $1,000 loan, so get out. I thought, but it's $2,700 a month. But quickly realized Emily had heard about the $1,000 from the in-laws. When Tom and I had asked the in-laws to help with the loan, we mentioned $1,000 per month. We intended to cover living expenses ourselves if they contributed, but ultimately, they didn't pay, so we had them help with living costs. Tom and I, even if dealing with family, didn't agree with one-sided burdens. It was clear Emily was misunderstanding. She raised her voice further. I won't let my brother and his wife do as they please in this house anymore. From now on, my husband and I will live here, and was eagerly trying to drive Tom and me out of the house. That day, after finishing work, Tom came home. I wondered if Emily had said the same things to him as she did to me. And Tom, as usual, calmly replied, well, if sister says so, let's leave. I agreed with his opinion. After all, even without Emily's urging, Tom, our son, and I were planning to leave the house. However, there was something we needed to do before leaving. Since there's still a loan repayment, it's up to you and your husband from now on. While saying this, Tom brought out the documents related to the house loan repayment. Yes, the monthly repayments, right? We can easily handle it. Emily and her husband readily accepted the responsibility for the loan repayments. Seeing this, Tom and I felt relieved and decided to leave the house. We had always thought a shorter period of cohabitation would be better. And most importantly, considering our son was entering a sensitive phase, we didn't want to live with the in-laws who could be a bit inconsiderate. On the day Tom, our son, and I were moving out. You're finally leaving, huh? I heard from Mom and Dad. You've been having them pay for living expenses? How are you going to manage now? Being a couple with a child? Can you even raise a child without money? Emily bombarded us with these remarks. But we were busy with the move to our new home. So we just let her words go in one ear and out the other. We simply didn't have the time to listen. Seeing our busy state and not being listened to, Emily called us arrogant. Despite such issues, we managed to move to our new home. It was busy, and the in-laws, perhaps too happy about Emily and her husband's return, were in a celebratory mood, showing little interest in our move. Emily, for her part, seemed not to care about us as long as we left quickly. So we didn't bother telling the in-laws or Emily and her husband our new address. Thankfully, this prevented the in-laws and Emily's family from unexpectedly showing up at our new home. A month after we left the family home, I kept receiving multiple calls from Emily. I was late to notice, so when I answered in a hurry, an agitated Emily asked, "What? The amount is wrong? What do you mean by $2,700 a month? And what about my parents not having any money?" Indeed, Emily initially misunderstood our monthly repayment as $1,000. However, I thought this misunderstanding was corrected when Tom and I handed over the loan repayment and ownership documents to Emily's husband, who then read and signed them. I assumed no one would be careless enough to skip reading important documents about their future home. Huh? Wasn't it written in the documents? The loan repayment for that house was set to $2,700 per month. What? Don't joke. $2,700 all of a sudden. Since you and your husband are both elites with good earnings, I thought I didn't need to mention the details. When I expressed my honest thoughts, Emily, sounding like a faint buzz on the phone, said, "I have no money. I'm not working, and my husband messed up overseas and came back. His salary is lower than before." I was genuinely surprised. Emily, who had acted superior when driving us out of the family home, couldn't afford the monthly payments we managed. Moreover, Emily said something else that caught my attention. "What do you mean by your parents not having any money?" "Well, you were making them pay for living expenses, right? That means my parents were supporting you." "Oh, I see what you mean. We were paying the full loan. So we thought to have your parents cover living expenses. But in reality, they didn't contribute much. They spent their money on pachinko every day." "Pachinko?" "Yes, pachinko." The in-laws hadn't been involved in pachinko until a few years ago, so Emily didn't know about it. "What? No earnings and a $2,700 monthly payment? I was counting on my parents' money, and now there's none of that either. Catherine, give me money." I shook my head. Emily, who had once looked down on us as ordinary, was now desperately asking for money. However, I couldn't lend her any. We have a son and expenses of our own. We can't afford to help someone else's household. I said this and hung up. Later, I heard that Emily and her husband, along with the in-laws, tried to storm our new home. But they ended up at the wrong house and had the police call on them. Wanting to avoid losing their house, Emily got a job, forced the in-laws to quit pachinko, and collected their earnings from part-time work to pay the loan. They spend their days doing piecework together at home, and I heard the atmosphere is terrible. Whether they'll eventually give up the house or miraculously finish paying the loan, I don't know. But we've decided to enjoy our life without worrying about them, vowing never to help Emily's family and the in-laws again. We are thoroughly enjoying our days, living just the three of us.